Welcome to Scratch Programming Class Hangout number 2. The things I'm going to be talking about tonight are some of the features in Scratch, like the ungrouping. I'm going to go over that again. Leaving comments in the scripts, which can be a big help for students as you're working with them. Using the backpack. And then I just want to point out, a lot of you have talked about connecting with the physical world. And one thing that's easy to do with Scratch now is to connect to a video camera, and then you can do kind of like Wii games where you can bat the ball around. And I just want to show you where that is at. In the creative guide that you had, the creative computing guide, one of the chapters that wasn't assigned was Unit 5, Diving Deeper. And that's a good one to go look at if you want to get into more depth with Scratch. Some of you are very familiar with Scratch, some of you are just beginners. So I would encourage you to, in your spare time, to look over the Unit 5, Diving Deeper. Okay, I am going to share my screen now. And first I'm going to flip over to Scratch. And what I'm going to show first is how to do ungrouping to make more costumes for a sprite that maybe only has one costume. First, you would go to your sprite library and choose a sprite from the library. On the left side, under Type, you'll find Vector, and usually you have better luck at ungrouping with a vector sprite. So I'm going to click Vector, and then I'm going to pick this bear, and I can either click and go OK or double click on him. I'm going to move my bear so I get a better view of him, and let's see how many costumes he has. Right now he's got 2 costumes, so let's say I want to do a third costume where both arms are up. What I would do is first copy this one, the second costume, because then I only have to manipulate one arm. So I'm going to right click and duplicate it. You want to make sure that you are in vector mode, and we are, otherwise it would say convert to vector mode. Make sure you have the arrow or the select tool, and I usually draw a box around my sprite. And then you notice that this button appeared, the ungroup button. You also had some other buttons that appeared here too, like forward layer. So you can do things with layering and grouping in vector that you can't do in bitmap. I'm going to ungroup him. And now when I click on him, click on the parts of him, interesting. This worked just perfectly earlier when I was doing this. The arm was available. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Oh, it doesn't look, let me try this again. Ungroup. There. I ungrouped him twice, is what I ended up doing. And now when I click on each section, I've got the option of doing something with that section. So this one, I'm going to rotate it. There's little boxes for growing or shrinking. If I click in the middle, I can move. But what I want to do with this one is rotate it all the way around, about like that, and then move it so it's kind of opposite the other one. And then click off. And then if I want to, I can select it and group it now as an option. This, unfortunately, sometimes doesn't work well on all the vector graphics, so it's kind of trial and error. I'm going to bring in another sprite. I'm going to bring in this boy. And changes. And go to costumes. We see that this sprite does have a lot of costumes, but let's say there's just one pose that he doesn't do that I want to put in there. So let's say this is the one I want to ungroup and do something with. First, I'll duplicate it. And scroll down, because usually the duplication goes to the end of the costumes that you have. Now I'm going to select my sprite and ungroup. And this time when I ungrouped, it's ungrouped, but it's kind of like parts of it. I don't have, I can do the rotating in that, but I've got to be a little bit careful here. It's a little tricky. But one thing about this too is I can do some things. For example, I can recolor sections of this. So if I want to recolor the shirt, I can. If I want to recolor the pants, I could. So ungrouping you can change your sprite, but you can change it for animation, but you can also change things like clothing if for some reason you want to. If you liked that and wanted it for the entire animation sequence, you'd have to go back in and change that on each one. So now I'm going to move this arm a little bit. And again, I got to be a little careful because the shirt didn't have the option for me to move the arm of the shirt. So I'm just going to finesse it a little bit. You get the idea of doing the ungrouping and animation. And sometimes it works the way you want it, sometimes it doesn't. You can also use the zoom here so that you can get in and see, like when I put the shirt back on, I didn't get it quite right. So I can kind of nudge it. I can also select and use the arrow key on my keyboard. You might not be able to see that, but it's moving slowly. So if I want to move in small increments, I can do that. So that's grouping and ungrouping a vector sprite for animation purposes. The next thing I'm going to show is comments, leaving comments in Scratch. So I'm going to go back out to the front of Scratch where I usually come in. You probably all noticed that I'm following you now on Scratch. So now when I go into Scratch, if you guys have been busy, it shows up here under what's happening, which is kind of cool. You can follow your students then, and that's a fast way for you to look and see what they've been doing. I'm going to go look at my stuff and just bring up a project that has some scripts in it. So the animation practice copy, we'll go look at that. This is one, or a copy of one, that you could use for instructions with your students. And in this one, I've got two different scripts that do the animation. So what you might do for this is right click and put add comment. And I could put run this script first, and then put the when flag clicked block on the script to the left and run it. And then if I don't want that whole thing like expanded like that, I can just click on the little triangle to collapse it. But that's if you're working on some complicated scripts or you want some instructions for students on why something is done a certain way. It's kind of a good idea to put a comment in there. Okay, let me check my list. Another thing that you can do is if you've got a script that you really like with a sprite and you want to use that script again, you can put that script in your backpack. You could also put the sprite in your backpack, and then you would have the sprite and the script. So just a second here, might have to move a few things out of the way. You might be hard for you to see, but at the very bottom, towards the middle of the Scratch screen, it says backpack. And if I go over to the right, I will see a triangle, an arrow. And if I click on that arrow, it's going to expand and show me everything that's in my backpack currently. And there is a studio, I believe there's more than one, that's called Backpack Items, where there are some really cool scripts and sprites that you might want to put in your backpack. So if I have one that I've got a script attached to that I really like, all I have to do is click and drag it down to my backpack. And it leaves the sprite here, even though it looked like it was going down. So now I have the sprite here in my backpack, and I can just drag it up and it will bring the script that it had with it. So now you can see the script came, because when I click on him, there's both of the scripts. If I go back to my original, there are both of the scripts there too. Occasionally, if you copy a script, you've got to go in and do some changing. For example, if I copied the script to another sprite and I was leaving it where it said costume, switch costume to boy 3 walking, then I would probably need to change that for whatever the sprite was. Okay. So we've covered backpacks, we've covered comments, and we've covered the ungrouping. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was under, in the scripts, under sensing. Some of you may have come across this already. There is a script to turn video on. I'll put that over there. So if you clicked on that script, you would get a message, depending on your operating system and cameras and stuff. You might get a message from the Flash player asking if you want to allow the camera. So you could click on that, and then you'll probably get another message that will show up in the Scratch, above your Scratch project, that will say something like allow. And I find when I used it, it takes a few seconds to come in. And now you can probably see me in the background there. So you can have an image, you can have video in the background, and you can also have your video interact in a game. So those are some things that you might want to explore as you master Scratch. And I am going to switch the video off, and it should go back. And the next thing I want to show you is the Learn from Scratch website. And I'm going to put this link on the website on the links in our class website, which I'll talk about. This is a site that I created a few years ago when I started doing presentations on Scratch. And I like to use it when I'm doing workshops. The latest workshop that I did on Scratch was in Minneapolis in 2014 at the TIES workshop. So if you're interested in looking at things from this workshop, this was a workshop for more advanced Scratch users. You can go in and look at all the resources that are listed here. And there are also handouts that you can access. One's on using different blocks and like the operator blocks and some of the more advanced blocks. And then one is a rubric for game design elements for students. So feel free to look that over. Let me know if you have any questions on any of the assignments as you're working on them, but things seem to be going well. At the top of the course, there is, a second, I'm looking for it. The course links. Of course, oh, there they are. This is a PDF document. It's a list of links used throughout the courses, and it's just the basic links, and I will be adding more to these. If you take a look at that and you found some resources that you think would be good to put on there, send me the information, send me the link. And this is something that I would encourage you to download and save by the end of the course so that you have access to it. And then you might want, and you might already do this, but you might also want to save some of your discussion conversations and copies of your assignments, just so you have a record of those. One of the things that I have to watch myself for is I'll find some really good resources, and I think I've bookmarked them, but I haven't. And then trying to find them, even if I have bookmarked them, because I'm not real organized about how I keep things. So I like having things like a list of the bookmarks that I can download and keep in one spot. So here's a maze game with levels. Let's go see inside that, and I'll leave some notes. And if you follow me, you'll see I've got some simple games set up and some more complicated games. So this might be one here where the mouse has lots of different things going on. And at some point, when the mouse gets to the green here, he's going to go to another level. So I might want to put something in explaining when that's going to happen or why that's going to happen. So here's when backdrop switches to something, wait until touching green and say you win. So if I wanted to put a comment here, anywhere in your script, you just right click on the block where you want to put it, and one of your options is to add comment. And then your little comment thing will pop out. It's hard to see right now, but there will be a line linking it to it. This triggers the next level, if I remember correctly. And then I can always roll that up if I want to. And will be right close to it now. So you can tell students to look for comments. Another thing that you might find as you're working along and looking, I find it interesting. You can see here I've got a block that I'm not using. I try to get rid of those, but sometimes I just leave them there. Like this one too, because I will go back and forth on how I'm working with things. So you might want to discuss with students that sometimes if they see that in a remix, they don't need an unattached block isn't going to do anything, but they could get rid of it if they wanted to. There's also an option when you have a lot of script here to do a right click on the background and say clean up. And you also have the option to add a comment. So maybe I want to have a general comment up here that's not attached to anything. I could have it here, and I could put information, whatever information I want to put here about how, if you wanted to create another level, which steps you would want to keep and which ones you would want to clone or copy. So that's how you can do cleanup, and that's how you can do a comment. You either right click on the block that you want to put it on. It doesn't have to be on the top block either. So I've got this one here, set score to 0. I could put a comment and say this will 0 the score whenever you start the game. Okay, and I'll close that. Let me go to data too, so you can see. We haven't done a lot with that, but you see I have some blocks here that are data blocks. I did that by creating a variable. I made a variable that was called score. And when I did that, these blocks appeared here. Set score to change score by, show variable score, hide variable score, and I could have more too. I could put in a timer if I wanted to. With the score, the check mark there, it makes the score visible. If I didn't want it to show up, I don't know why I wouldn't, I would take the check mark out. But now with the check mark in, the score shows here. And I could do the same thing with creating a timer or any other type of variable. And then this one is for making a list. And again, that's a kind of an advanced concept, but if you're interested in that, I will put some links on our class links just to show you where you'd go for more information about making a list or making a variable. Okay, Jim says he likes the comments. Kids could use them to explain what they did so other kids might collaborate with them when they remix some of their own projects. That's a good idea. Yeah, I was thinking of it from the teacher's standpoint, but definitely I would encourage kids to put in comments. And it's important too, because sometimes when kids look at remixing and they don't always understand things, they might start dinking around with a script that really is important to keep it the way it is. So explaining what the script is for is a good comment. Okay, let's see. I think I've covered everything on here. That doesn't mean you can't ask me questions, because if you have some questions, I can send out the answers in an email. But I've really enjoyed working with you folks and looking at the great resources that you've found and the good work that you've been doing on your projects as you go along.